Welcome back to the Dreaming and Doing podcast. I am really excited to be here with Amina AlTai, who is a holistic business and career coach, proud immigrant, and chronic illness advocate. And it's been a while since I've had the chance to talk to Amina, so I'm super glad that we can be here today to catch up and also to let people know about the really incredible work that she's doing. So,
Thank you so
welcome,
much.
Amina.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and joy to be with you and to see you after so long.
Yes. So, Amina, you do mind, body, and career, right? Like that's how you approach executive coaching. So,
Mhm.
talk with me about this mind, body, and career approach that you take.
Yeah. So early on in my career, I started in marketing and brand management. And for a while, I had my own agency and I hadn't done any of the coaching work on myself. And I carried all of my familial programming into the workplace. So I was boundaryless and deeply codependent and took care of everybody but myself. And I eventually burned out and I developed two autoimmune diseases. And it was this very dramatic moment where I got a call from my doctor and she said, if you don't go to the hospital now, instead of going to work, you are days away from multiple organ failure. And it was this really dramatic moment in my life, the stop moment, I call it. And so that was the moment that kind of set me on a new path where I realized, okay, I can't show up at work the way that I have been showing up at work. And I invested in coaching for the first time for myself, just to kind of feel better in my own life. And I call it my Eat, Pray, Love year that I embarked on after that point. And it just opened up so much possibility for me. And it opened up the doorway for coaching. So when I sat down to design my own curriculum, I really wanted it to support I wanted to take a holistic approach because I knew that you can't just focus on career. You can't just focus on leadership. We are one person, we are one system. And so if we really look at our mindset and what's happening in that space, if we look at our bodies and how we're taking care of ourselves or not, and if we look at the strategies and tactics we're using in our careers and we take that multidisciplinary approach, we could be much more successful.
Yeah. And as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about another episode we did recently. We were interviewing someone who had experienced burnout, and her experience with burnout led her to sell her business, develop this whole new business where she is location independent. She has her own like she's able to travel, make her own schedule that works with her own body and her own body's needs. And I think the thing that I'm thinking about as I hear you talk and as I'm reflecting on that conversation is these moments where you have this health crisis or you're experiencing burnout, we typically don't talk about those experiences in a positive light because they're so hard and stressful.
Yeah.
And yet there are these opportunities to listen to our body and say, hey, what can I do with this? What can I learn from this? And it sounds like this was that moment for you where you took in that information and it kind of led you down a new road.
Yeah. I had a spiritual teacher once who said we have to use the contrast in our life to refine the vision. And the
Mm.
contrast is any material that doesn't feel good that causes friction, but it allows us to refine as we move forward. And so that was a contrast moment. And I used it to refine the vision.
Yes, I love that. Not easy either,
Oh,
right? When that
no.
happens.
And it's so interesting because I've been on other people's podcasts. I've had people on my podcast. And when we tell these sort of origin stories, they're so tidy, right? They're so linear and neat. But in the moment, they're deeply messy and you don't know the way forward and you don't know what you're going to do. And so I just honor anyone that is in a moment like that because it's messy and it's challenging.
Yes. And one of the other things that I'm thinking about as you're talking is really this idea of wellness as it relates to career,
Mm.
because I think that even though more and more people are talking about the importance of well being as it relates to productivity and even the health of an organization, I think there's still this underlying belief that many people have that we need to work hard, which means long hours. We need to be stressed and do all these things in order to be productive. And I know that you really take an anti hustle approach to your work.
Yeah.
Would you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I am very anti hustle culture because I came of age in hustle culture during the girl boss era and leaned into that in my first business. And it's partly what had me express two autoimmune diseases. And hustle is really interesting because I'm writing my book right now and I actually was sort of tracing the lineage of hustle. And, hustle is something that a lot of marginalized and underrepresented people
Mm.
had to do to survive, right? Because of so much bias, because of redlining, because of the pay gap. A lot of people, underrepresented people, had to work 2, 3 jobs to make ends meet. But we saw a lot of organizations sort of co-opting the idea of hustle to further exploit people. And so I think that we really need to change the conversation there. And I think it's very much about working in service of our genius versus hustling. So, I really believe that each and every one of us came to planet Earth with a gift and something to contribute. And when we kind of figure out what that gift is, what that genius is, and we bring it forth, what we can contribute far outpaces what we can contribute in spaces we're not genius at. And so we don't need to hustle. We just need to find that sweet spot where we're contributing the thing that is the best within us, basically.
Yes. So for people who are listening and they're thinking like, yeah, that sounds really great theoretically,
Mhm.
and also in the core of my being, I don't really buy it. I
Ooh,
am
yeah.
really glued and committed to this idea that you've just got to work hard and that's how you be productive. You spend long hours at the office. This idea of there being another way where I'm able to focus on my own well-being, that just doesn't sound possible. Like,
Mhm.
what are some things for people who have a really hard time believing that there's another way? What are some recommendations that you would have, or what would you say to that?
I love this. So, 3 things. The first one is that we all get our lessons when and how we get our lessons. So, if you don't believe that wellness can be an important part or a contributing part to the way that you work and you feel like it's really hustle and productivity all the way, I honor that experience. And there may come a moment where something shifts and you change that idea. I think the other thing that's really important is that we get a sense of what we are genius at, because most of us don't kind of buy into this because we don't believe we actually have any genius to contribute. So a lot of us think of genius in a particular way, right? A certain IQ or a particular area that we're contributing, but every human has something out of this world to contribute. And we can start by just spending 10 minutes a day in that space. So I would invite people that are listening now that don't believe in this way to just spend 10 minutes there a day. And once you spend 10 minutes there, see what's possible for you, how you feel. And then the next day, see if you can spend an additional 10 minutes there, and so on and so forth until maybe things really start to shift for you. And then the third thing I'll say is lean into people that are living that way. So if you don't believe that it's possible for you, I want you to find examples of people out in the world that have perhaps a slightly less hustle culture, productive vibe around their work. And just start paying close attention to them and how they're living and how they move through work. And if they feel close enough to you, it's going to expand your belief system that it's possible for you as well. I'll give you an example. So, when I was shifting from overworking in my first agency to then trying to change into this coaching business and not embody hustle culture, I was trying it on for size. I wasn't sure if it actually could work. I was sort of figuring it out as I went. But I started to look for examples out in the world of people that, weren't bedraggled and overworking and burned out with really stressed adrenals. And one by one, I would find people. And it was really important that I found people that sort of identified similarly to me, because part of my story was like, well, of course that cishet white man can do that. Like, he's got all the power and privilege. And so when I found people with closer identities to mine, I was like, oh, it is possible for me. Oh, they're doing this thing, I'm going to try that. So look for the examples out in the world as well.
Yes, I really love that. And as you're talking about kind of finding what you're good at and kind of leaning into your zone of genius, um, I'm wondering if you can say more about that, because I think, like you said, a lot of people don't realize what they are good at. When someone is thinking about starting their own business, they might say to themselves, like, well, but there are a bazillion other people who can do that. Or when someone is starting a new career, even if it's not their own business, I think, and they have all of the training, feeling a bit like an imposter. What are some ways that people can kind of uncover their zone of genius, and how can that help us in our well-being?
Yeah. So I would say, first and foremost, you want to look inward. You want to ask yourself, where are the places that you are off the charts amazing? Where are your efforts innate? It's like almost like you don't have to force or push to contribute something. It just flows through you. And the thing about our genius is a lot of us are ready to very quickly discount it because it comes so effortlessly. So I'll give you an example. I was once on a consult call with this woman who worked in the trades. And she came and she's not my typical client. I usually work with like sort of executives, lawyers, doctors, marketing leaders, that type of thing. And she came onto the call and she was talking about changing her career. And she thought that her gifts were in this space as a mechanic and as a person in the trades. But literally within a few minutes, I could tell that this person was exceptionally emotionally intelligent. The way that they were speaking, the way that they had witnessed their own emotions, the way that they were showing up with me. And I reflected that back to them. And I was like, I think that there's exceptional EQ and capacity here. And they were like, no, but everybody's like that. And I was like, actually, they're not. And so a lot of the times we really readily discount the genius. And so the thing that you're throwing away and saying it's so easy and everyone's got that thing, it's probably something there for you. The other thing you can do, this is a fun one, is ask people in your life, 5 people that see you fully, what they think your genius is. And see you fully is the operative phase here, because a lot of the times people will project onto us. So you want to find the people that know you, love you, always cheering for you, and really see the truth of who you are. Ask them what they think your genius is.
Yes.
And then there was a part 2 of your question. I forgot it.
And how can that connect to our well-being at work?
Because when we focus on what we're genius at, there's much less friction. So I believe we operate in 3 zones: our exceptional or genius, our excellent, and our eh. So our exceptional is where we're like off the charts amazing. Our excellent is where we're polished and proficient and we've clocked our 10,000 hours. And the eh is like what we're average at. If I spend all day working in what I'm average at, it is going to take me so long to get the job done. If I spend all day in my genius, it's going to be pretty miraculous in terms of what I'm able to contribute. And so when we shift into that space, what we produce is that much more prolific, that much more vast. And also, we're not fighting our bodies, we're working with them, right? Because if I'm working in a space that I'm not designed for, I probably have to instrumentalize my body to get the thing done, to get it done to a quality that I feel comfortable with. And so I'm squeezing every last drop of productivity out of myself, versus if I'm in my genius, there's a whole lot more ease and flow.
Yes. And I'm just thinking about that, how good it feels when you are doing the thing that feels natural, that you are naturally really good at. And also some of the negative self-talk that can come up when we're doing something that's not really something that we're great at. And rather than realizing that this just isn't my skill set, we start to think that there's something wrong with me.
Yes, absolutely. I'm working on my book and I was sort of recounting some of my own stories around this. And I remember in one of my internships, this is like many moons ago, I was interning in commercial sales. And I thought initially like, oh, sales will be cool. Like I'm charismatic. I love chatting with people. But at the intern level, you're basically spending all day, every day in Excel, making pivot tables and like running regressions. And like, can I find my way around Excel? Sure. But like, can I spend all day, every day in there, like doing the fancy things that they need me to do? No. And I felt like I was failing spectacularly. And I felt like such a misfit in that role. And there was such a hit to my confidence. And then when I was able to kind of zoom out and realize, okay, like I know I've been able to knock it out of the park in other areas. I'm not broken. I think this just isn't the space for me. These aren't where my skills are. These aren't where my genius is.
Yes, I'm totally resonating with that when I think about administrative work and how it just feels like it's sucking the life out of my soul.
I'm with you. Not made for it.
No.
And there's some people that love it and that like want to organize our lives and they're so happy to do it.
Yes. I remember one time I was doing like a group therapy, and I had a bunch of people in there who like love Excel sheets, and they were just having a great old time chatting about all the amazing things that they can do in Excel and how it makes them so happy. Which
Bless
was
them.
Yes, it was so fun to watch them enjoy that. And I can appreciate their love and skills in that area. It's just not one of my skills.
Me either, sister.
Yes. So knowing that when we're not working in our zone of genius, it can really drain us. It can start making us question ourselves and our own abilities. Maybe some negative thoughts start popping up. And I know that one of the areas you're really gifted in is helping people find their passion and their purpose. And you do that with people who are already, by outward definitions, they're succeeding. It looks like everything's going great for them. And yet they're showing up to work going, maybe I'm just not loving this. So, talk with me about what you often see when people are not living into their passion and purpose and some things that people can do to lean into that more.
Yeah. Most of my practice is made up of really celebrated individuals that sort of sprinted to the top of the ladder in their career. And then they look around and they realize that this isn't it. Like there's no joy or freedom at the summit. And they're like, I don't even like this thing that I'm now at the top of.